Paris, 1793. The air smelled of smoke, sweat, and fear. It clung to the streets like fog, rolling through every alley, whispering that no one was safe anymore. The revolution had promised freedom, but freedom had a strange sound now, the rhythm of drums and the heavy drop of the guillotine. In a small apartment above a bakery that no longer baked lived Julien Moreau and Elise Duval. They weren't heroes or traitors, just two ordinary people trying to stay invisible. The room was small, the walls cracked, and the only warmth came from a single candle that burned between them each night. Julien had been a law student once. He believed in justice, equality, and the power of words. Now, words could kill. So he kept quiet, counting grain shipments for the Committee of Supply, pretending he still believed in the Republic. Pretending was safer than honesty. Elise was a seamstress. Her fingers used to stitch gowns for noblewomen. Now she patched uniforms for soldiers. Sometimes she'd find bloodstains on the cloth. She didn't ask where they came from. Questions, like words, had become dangerous. They lived quietly. They shared bread, whispered about nothing, and tried not to listen when someone screamed outside. At night, they'd sit together by the window, the candle flickering between them. One night, Julien spoke softly. "Do you ever think about before all this?" Elise kept her eyes on the flame. "No, it hurts too much." He smiled faintly. "Then what do you think about?" "I think about keeping you alive," she said. He reached for her hand, rough from work but still warm. "Then we think the same thing." Outside, the wind carried the faint echo of a crowd cheering. Another execution, another day of liberty. Weeks passed. The cold crept in. The city grew quieter, as if even the rats had learned to whisper. The bakery below them stood empty, its owners taken months ago for hoarding flour. The words still painted on the door, "Freedom for all," had started to peel. Every day, Julien walked to work, past the square. He tried not to look, but it was impossible. The scaffold stood there like a monument, and sometimes when he came home, the smell of blood still clung to his coat. Elise never mentioned it. She'd simply take the coat from him and hang it by the window, letting the cold air wash it clean. One evening, she came home from the market with only half a loaf of bread. "They raised the price again," she muttered, "and they've started arresting anyone who complains." Julien nodded slowly. "Then we'll just whisper our hunger." She tried to laugh, but it came out as a sigh. That night, they ate in silence. The candle burned low. They didn't speak of the people who had disappeared from their street, or the friend who had stopped knocking on their door. Silence had become a kind of language. Then, one morning, came the knock that broke it. It was early, still gray outside. The sound was sharp, official. Julien froze. Elise's needle slipped from her hand. When he opened the door, two soldiers stood there, tricolor sashes across their chests. Their eyes were cold and practiced. "Citizen Moreau?" one of them asked. Julien swallowed. "Yes." "You are requested for questioning." Elise stepped forward, heart pounding. "What questioning?" "What has he done?" The soldier didn't blink. "He's been named." "That's enough." Julien turned to her, his face pale but calm. "It's all right." "It's not," she whispered. "It has to be." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Keep the candle burning." They took him. The sound of their boots on the stairs echoed long after they were gone. Elise stood at the door for hours, unable to move. The city outside carried on, merchants shouting, carts creaking, a baby crying somewhere. But all she could hear was the silence he left behind. That night, she didn't light the candle. She couldn't. The darkness felt truer. Days turned into weeks. She asked questions, quietly at first, then louder. At the committee office, they told her to wait. At the prison, they told her to leave. At the market, people avoided her eyes. No one wanted to be seen speaking to the woman with the missing lover. Finally, one of Julian's old friends found her. He didn't speak much, just handed her a folded note. "They're executing him tomorrow," he said. "I'm sorry." Her knees gave out. She didn't even cry at first. It was as if the world had gone silent. The next morning, she stayed inside. She couldn't bear to see it. She sat at the window, hands gripping the sill, listening to the sound of drums in the distance. When the cheers came, she pressed her fingers to her ears. But she still heard it, deep inside her chest. That night, she lit the candle again. It burned unevenly, the flame trembling with every breath of wind. She whispered his name once, just once, and the sound seemed to fill the room. Bread still had to be bought. Clothes still had to be mended. People still smiled as if the world wasn't devouring itself. One evening, weeks later, there was another knock. This one was softer. Elise opened the door to find a young messenger holding a letter. "For Citizen Duval," he said. She took it with shaking hands. The paper was creased, the ink faded, but the handwriting, she knew it instantly. It was from Julien. "My Elise, if you are reading this, then I am gone. I don't want you to remember me in the square, but here, in our room, with the candle between us. Remember that even in the darkest times, we had something no guillotine could touch. We loved without permission. Don't let them take that from you. Light the candle every night and I'll find you in its glow. Yours, always, Julien." She read it again and again until the letters blurred with her tears. Then she placed it beside the candle and watched the flame flicker against the paper. As months passed, the drums outside grew quieter. Even the revolution seemed to tire of itself. People began to talk of peace, of rebuilding, of forgetting, but Elise did not forget. Every night, she lit the candle. Sometimes she whispered to it. Sometimes she just watched it burn. The wax ran down in rivers, pooling on the table like melted time. Neighbors began to talk. Some said she was mad. Others said she was faithful. Children passing by would point up to the window and whisper, "That's the lady with the candle." Years later, when the execution stopped and the city found new reasons to celebrate, the light still shone from that little apartment above the bakery. And if you walked by on a quiet evening, you could still see the flicker through the dusty glass, steady, soft, defiant. They say a revolution can burn a city, but it can't burn love. And maybe, somewhere in that faint, trembling flame, Julien still kept his promise, finding her night after night in the candlelight.